They came from all over the U.S. to North Carolina and the beautiful Lake Junaluska Conference Center for the first ever National Older Adult Conference.
It's fun to be a part of things that happen for the first time.
They were older adults seeking affirmation in the church, wanting to grow in potential and celebrating their relationships. They said yes to activities. Yes to laughter.
Jack Benny said, age is a matter of the mind. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
Yes to learning.
Growing spiritually and mentally can add life to our years.
Yes to years.
I was really intrigued with the title of the topic that is going to be prevalent as you meet. Say yes to years. But I'd like to add one thing, don't count them.
After registering and settling in, the conference started with a chance to see friends from the past and meet friends for the future. From that point on, the activities flowed nonstop, culminating in a talent show.
So the other fella came back and he said, my goodness, you sold 20 Bibles in 1 week? Yeah. How in the world did you do that? Fella said, well, I went up to the door, and when they opened it, I said to them, do you want a Bible, or do you want me to read it to you? And I said, if it's a football, why is he carrying it under his arm?
In special interest groups, participants were also able to meet with special groups, learn new crafts, such as carving, and sing in the conference choir. The afternoon workshops gave older adults a chance to choose from over 20 speakers and a variety of topics. Some focused on issues of aging and attempts to find solutions for living in society today.
And you get there and you can't show it.
John Earle of Sebring, Florida, conducted a workshop on writing your own life story. One workshop dealt with ethics and values and the choices we make.
My wife said if I take one more volunteer job, she's going to leave me.
Another discussed issues related to financial planning.
In the use of your economic resources, which in a sense have been entrusted to us by God to use in a way that will produce spiritual values in this world and those carried on into the next world.
Others looked at the global situation and better ways to understand and work towards a better future.
Age is education. It was brought out this morning, certainly, and also last night a little bit. But the longer we live, the longer we have to learn, and the longer we have to teach others.
For there is one type of relationship that is a symmetrical relationship, another that is asymmetrical. Closeness is part of symmetry. The desire for intimacy, the desire for community. We are all shaping each other. All of us are shaping each other.
Humor was a main ingredient for the conference. Humor about age, about situations, about life.
Not all of us can remember stories, and some of us who can't tell them without ruining the punchline. But all of us can open ourselves to the healing joy which comes from laughter. It can add life to our years.
You know, the fellow who has that dream of being a real success, and success in America means greenbacks. And sometimes I think we should paint our flag solid green instead of red, white, and blue. But when he finally reaches that stage, the dreams that he had when he was 18 of driving around in a gray suede convertible Cadillac with the top down and the wind blowing through his hair and a bevy of girls around him, he can't buy it then. If he's successful, though, at 60 or 65, he can do it. But he gets into the Cadillac, which he can hardly get under the wheel. He has no hair for the wind to blow through. And besides that, he has to pay the girls to get in there with him, see?
When my wife Mary was teaching school at 4th grade at York Center, I used to go down to school once a year to help her with the Christmas party. And at the end of the year, she would ask the students, the 4th graders, to write her a letter telling her what they enjoyed most about the year. And one little 4th grader said, "I enjoyed the Christmas party. And I'm so glad Mrs. Robinson brought her has-been along to the party." Now, I'll confess to you that there have been plenty of times I have felt like a has-been. But not this week. I feel a lot more like an is. And even sometimes like an is becoming.
Michael Cunningham, a bus driver, was passing a deserted bus stop when one of his passengers called out that there was a passenger who wanted to get on the bus. And so he pulled over to the curb and opened the doors. And after a moment or so, he saw an elderly woman with a cane crossing the street very slowly. And he waited patiently, and as she made her way to the bus and climbed up the steps, she went to the little box and looking through her purse for her bus pass, Michael began to close the door. "Wait a minute," she snapped. "My mother's coming."
Two forums were presented, one dealing with the healthcare crisis in the U.S., led by Dwayne Ramsey, and the other on the future of the Church of the Brethren, presented by annual conference moderator Chuck Boyer. The main focus of the conference was the chance for older adults to affirm their place in the church and society. Many worship services and plenary sessions spoke to those and related issues.
No acres here.
On Monday, Earle Fike addressed the topic, Adding Life to Our Years.
Wherever we find ourselves on the age continuum, those of us who are gathered here are persons, I think, by and large, who are self-aware that we are participants in a cultural revolution.
On Tuesday night, Patricia Helman's sermon was entitled, Hearing the Porridge Bubble.
The Canadian writer, Robertson Davies, is one of my favorite writers, a prolific creator of novels and plays, a source of choice humor, and a great reporter concerning life and all its attendant paradoxes. Recently, in the New York Times Book Review, an article of Davies appeared coinciding with one of these committee deadlines. The title of the article was, You're Not Getting Older, You're Getting Nosier. And I thought, now how did he know that? The very insightful essay calls for curiosity and a sense of humor to accompany us into old age.
Paul Robinson's sermon on Wednesday was titled, Of Glory in the River.
My favorite metaphor of all for life is a river. And my text comes straight out of the 46th Psalm. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of our God. And God is in the midst of her. That river is your life. Rivers have very small beginnings. They begin as little streams. If you were to go way up in Minnesota, there's a little stream that you could almost step across, but it's the headwaters of a great Mississippi River. For as the river flows along, it grows and matures and expands and changes. For like our lives, the river is always moving. It never stays the same. It moves relentlessly on, changing its patterns from time to time, from place to place. It is constantly reminding us of change. Your life is that river. And in that river is the presence of God. And on that river, you've got to live with it.
Barbara Cuffie of Baltimore's First Church talked about loving your enemies at the Thursday night service.
Many of those who are persecuted are Christians. And many of those who are doing the persecuting are Christians. However, we do not have to go all the way to South Africa to see how racism, sexism, classism, and homophobia are having a major impact on the Christian community and the society within the United States. I understand that the Ku Klux Klan, the skinheads, and the other white supremacist groups are increasing their memberships perhaps much faster than the church, even as we sit here.
The morning plenary sessions dealt with issues directly related to the conference theme. Some included audience reaction. The session by C. Kermit Phelps was on celebrating our relationships.
If everything you've ever experienced is put in your memory bank, you see, when you were 18 and somebody asked you something, you didn't have very many cards to fumble through to find out what the answer was, because there wasn't very much up there. But when you're 60 and somebody asks you, can you see how many you had to go through to get to it? And you may not even find it at that time, but then next day when you don't want it, here it comes, yeah? You can't say that's a faulty memory because it was there all along. It's just a question of finding it when you want it.
LaVon Rupel from Modesto, California, spoke on aging and personal growth.
How old would you be if you didn't know how old you were? Mahatma Gandhi was once asked, "What do you think of Western civilization?" And his reply was, "I think it would be a very good idea indeed." Today I am asked, what do I think of aging and personal growth? And I think it is a very good idea indeed. It is true, it is absolutely true that the post-60 years are some of the best years for personal growth of all the years that we are given. We are constantly remaking ourselves to give greater meaning to life. And for this we say yes to years.
Noted writer and speaker Elizabeth Welsh presented Affirming Our Place in Society.
But we have a history with young people and old of a spiritual and religious basis for the things that we believe in. So we have something very vital and important to do and to give.
The conference ended Friday morning with Tana Durnbaugh and Don Miller discussing the place of older adults in the church.
I believe we're on the edge of a great time in the life of the church, and I think we gathered here are in the center of that great time, and I think it's the time to celebrate, Tana.
They did celebrate. They played games. They gathered for a group picture. They square danced.
Find your original partner and start promenading. Find your original partner.
And they lifted their voices in praise each night at the worship services. Of all the songs sung, the one heard most often was the theme song, Say Yes to Years, written by Ken Morris and Diane Morningstar. And like all mountaintop experiences, there came a time to leave the mountain. Although they left the presence of one another, the spirit, ideas, and energy that had been created remain with them as they returned home. And with it the promise that this first-of-its-kind conference will not be the last. Those who traveled to Lake Junaluska returned home renewed, invigorated, and more confident of their place in the church and the world.
Church development, we only have 3 people or 4 older than we are in our church. They play a very vital part in being the mentors for our new Church of the Brethren members from our community. I don't think the church could really deal without or do without the older adults in any congregation that we've been in.
I look towards the older people like the Tim Remans and so on in our church to send us on our way, and I will hope that I will do the same for the next generation, to just edge them on and challenge them and not leave them alone, but go with them.
When I get back to Defiance, we have some older people who thought they were done. But when I get back, I'm going to be a cheerleader and say, yes, 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 let's go.
This is the ending of a week that's been a high point for you. It's been a time to come together. It's been a time for you to reestablish old relationships. It's been a time to look at yourself in a different way and take home a lot of potential. But just like Charlie Brown says, it's potential. St. Teresa says, in these times, God has no other hands but mine, no other feet but mine. Grant, God, that I will be worthy to be thy hand and thy foot. I'd like for us to close together with a litany. I'm going to make a statement, and then we will say yes to years. The focus of this conference had 3 themes.
Yes to years.
Celebrate relationships. Yes to years. Continue to grow personally. Yes to years. Affirm your church. Yes to years. Affirm your place in church and society.
go in peace. May you go in love. May you go with God.